So thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man.
I'm excited. The last time we talked we talk all the time, but the last time we spoke on the podcast, I thought it was awesome. And then now I'm excited because we actually had done some cool business together. So real quick, before we get into the whole shenanigans here, tell everybody what you do for a living and where you are, roughly, and all that good stuff.
Well, I do a bunch of things. My primary occupation is I'm a loan officer with a bank. And then I have a bunch of other things that I do, some with my brothers, some with my kids. So I have businesses in artifacts and artifact collection and buying and selling of antiques and, generally just kind of hunting and finding stuff. And then I do a little bit of stuff that you introduced me to, which would be asset preservation, just to kind of get my kids out there, working and learning some skills and
all the shit that doesn't make money.
Yeah, exactly. And then I own a bar and a restaurant with my brothers, and we got an art gallery and a couple things like that. So we got a lot of sticks in the fire. So
that's awesome. And you're in South Dakota, Wyoming.
I'm in the Black Hills, yeah, right out there, right on the border, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Montana. So we're getting ready for minus 25 this week, and Tuesday it'll be 50. So
degrees?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, that's insane. I remember, and I want to start with the story of when you were in New Jersey. So I know you because you were my wife's boss. And
correct.
And you and I hit it off, and you and Christine were friendly, but you were her boss. You know what I mean? So that was, and it was a restaurant industry. It was goofy. But when you moved from New Jersey to where you are now, I thought it was a ballsy thing to do. What made you do that?
It wasn't an instant transition, when, you live on the East Coast, you live in the cities, I would go, my younger brother, Bob, he's kind of a famous Western painter now, but then we were kind of figuring out where everything was going to be. And I would go out to Wyoming because Bob wanted to paint cowboys like Frederick Remington did back in the turn of the century. Right. And, back in the day, working in a restaurant with Christine and say everybody, I'd get my 2 weeks off and he'd be like, hey, you want to drive out to Wyoming? I'm like, I don't even know where Wyoming is on a map, but sure. I mean, and again, coming from North Jersey, you just kind of took Route 80 until you ran into Wyoming. It just
exactly,
you didn't have to make a right or left. You just kept going straight. And, I kind of went out there and I'm like, it's kind of neat. I kind of like it. So I started doing a little bit of a, back and forth when I got in the mortgage industry, because I got out of the restaurant industry in the late 90s. I said I was going to live out here. And then kind of like everybody in New Jersey or New York, you kind of want to get away from New Jersey, New York at some point, even though you love it, you kind of hate it at the same time. And rather than go to the Carolinas or Florida, I decided to go where there's nobody. And that was Wyoming. I'm in a town of 300 people. And, it was just something to kind of just put on the, there was a lot of like kind of reasons monetarily. It was kind of a cheaper way to live and it's a lot more free. Freedom wise, like I don't have as many rules, but there's rules and they're just different. So
I'm always amazed when you're like telling me stories about if somebody has to go to the hospital or somebody has to do whatever in Wyoming. It's just like it's a different expectation. Like if you dial 911 in where we are in New Jersey, you're going to get cops fast. Like it's, like if you're like, I remember I had a kidney stone and I was on my hands and knees in the bathroom. I called my dad. My dad came and picked me up. We're literally 2 minutes from the hospital, 3 minutes from the hospital, walked right in there, whatever. It's not like that where you live, but I think that there's a trade-off with that where you get a lot of, like you said, freedoms.
Oh yeah. I mean, for me to go to Lowe's, it's 100 miles in one direction. And if Lowe's doesn't have it, then it's another 110 or 130 miles to Home Depot to kind of find what I need. So you really have to pre-plan just even the basics of a Home Depot or Lowe's visit. But, like if you're sick, yeah, you could be, we had a friend of ours shot in the face
Oh my God.
over the summer in a little bit of an incident. This isn't even a story. This is the truth. And they had to life flight him 500 miles down to Denver.
Really?
Otherwise, he would have died.
Wow. Can you say what the incident was? You said it's a little bit of an incident. Is it like guys just like fucking around and the gun went off, or was it like you're on my
No,
land?
it was over a parking spot. Like you would have
Oh my
thought they were at
God.
Walmart in someplace in Manhattan, but no, it was just kind of a. You got to remember out here, there's a lot of outlaws. Like still a lot of 1% kind of people that
Yeah.
like inherently did not want to be part of society, so they moved away from society.
Right.
So yet they still have to have society around them, and you kind of again, you're in an area that you have the right to bear arms. Sometimes you also have the right to be stupid. So
Everybody has that right. That's for
Yeah.
sure. That's anywhere you are. I think it's interesting because I don't know if it's for me. I had this whole thing where I was going to move, and I had this conversation with Christine, and my big thing was I need to have a certain amount of Italian people near me at all times. That's just like and what really did it for me was we went down to Arizona, and this is 20 years ago. I mean, we went to go see Christine's mom and dad, and there was one good Italian restaurant in Phoenix, in the Phoenix area. And I remember asking somebody, I don't know who the heck it was, one of Christine Bob's, her dad's neighbors. I said, where's it good? They said, well, no, there's a Marie Callender's across down the road. I'm like, Marie Callender's? Oh, who the fuck is that? Like, I couldn't fathom that there wasn't 11 pizza places in like, half of a mile radius. And where you are, I mean, you own the restaurant. So it's like, I find it almost like, like Boss Hog and the Dukes of Hazzard kind of thing, where it's like, you own the restaurant and Joe owns the repair shop. And this, I just kind of like, but you summed it up for me one time really good. We were talking about the path of money, and
Right.
it's always the same money going around your town. And then Sturgis happens, and it's like, then it's new money that's coming into the town. And then that money leaves, and then guys come in to go fishing or hunting, and that's different money. I found that to be fascinating. It was an interesting way of looking at it, where it wasn't just the same 300 people changing hands of money.
Right.
It's the influx of money, and then that goes away. I think you can make a good living in Wyoming. I know, either whether you own something or you're an electrician or something like that. I think it's there. I just think it's a different lifestyle. It's a different lifestyle.
Yeah. Listen, it hasn't changed in 150 years out here. Like you can still come, you can still assess a need, and you can build it and they will come. I mean, it sounds kind of corny and stupid,
Right.
but literally you can put anything up. The other thing is the communities are generally encouraging, where I think when I was back east, if I said, hey, I want to open up a coffee shop, 9 out of my 10 friends would be honest and say, yeah, good luck.
Right.
And then they would, internalize and say, oh, Coronado, he's an idiot. That's not going to make any money, and you're going to struggle every day. I think if, I wanted to really specialize and did something in my town or in the hills, and I said, look, I'm going to put up a coffee shop, 9 out of 10 people would do the same thing. They would say, good luck. And then they'd come support you,
Right.
which is kind of different. And, they really would wish you well, even though you may fail miserably, because most people out here make money in spite of themselves, unfortunately, because there's just no competition.
Right.
But you can literally do anything. And, like I think our industries out here, we have the same issues that every industry has, whether it's a logging industry or whether it's, like I said, coffee shops or bars, hotels, there's nobody that wants to work. So, but one of the big differences out here is, when I get an East Coaster or say West Coaster or city dweller, I'd say, if they have an experience like, well, I want to see a manager. Well, there's no such thing as managers, really. It's owners.
I'm the owner.
You meet the owner. Like, and if you want to go to the top, you just did, and it doesn't go any further. And if you're not satisfied, you could go eat someplace else. Granted,
Right.
It's probably an hour and a half away, and it probably is not open. But good luck.
Great.
So
That have you seen an influx of people? Not an influx for you guys would be like 10 people, but have you seen like any influx of people coming from other places moving to
yeah,
like so you see your cities getting bigger.
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's
no, we've got the same problem every part of the country has is you know, dare you say you've got Californians moving in, the
oh
true Wyomingites are like it's Wyoming, not Wyoming, but you have other areas creeping in from all parts of the country. Some of it's politically related, some of it's they're just kind of like COVID's, really kind of opened a lot of people's eyes. Maybe you can work a little more remote or you can be a little more remote.
mm,
I mean, we have, like, look, I could get something on Amazon in 2 or 3 days, unlike you,
sure.
that's 24 hours or less or six
Same
hours. I do.
day.
Yeah, we don't get that, but you can still get almost anything you need. But we do have like people get out into this part of the country and they see like you could still buy 1,000 acres, you could still buy
Yeah.
500 or 100 acres, and get, like kind of semi-remote, but it's not everybody's, lifestyle. Like it's definitely, this is like, that there's like, I'm a food person. Like
Sure.
I'd like to get a slice in a soda for $5 someplace, but
That'd be
like
great.
unless I'm cooking it, I'm not getting it. So
Well, that's what you do, especially when I talk about like the antiquing and Native American art and that kind of stuff, is you get to do some traveling,
I travel
and
all over. I mean,
that's what's
enough to,
cool.
yeah, like in September, I did 16 or 17 states. I did 5,500 miles and I hit every antique store that I possibly could, art galleries. I mean, flea market, I didn't care. So,
Right. So what you
uh,
do is you and your brother, you guys are really truly experts in Native American and Western art. I think that's really safe to say.
yeah, I mean, I would say so. Like, definitely would be subject matter experts. And again, there's many aspects of collecting artwork, whether it's Native American, whether it's Western, whether it's guns, baskets, rugs, beadwork, drawings, jewelry. I mean, there's so many different subsections of that if
Right.
you classify it. But yeah, you would say we could be subject matter experts for sure.
So an interesting thing that you and I did together, which I thought it was great, was the guy in Brooklyn. When you
Yes.
called me up and said, there's a guy in Brooklyn that's got 1,000 Western books, saddles, cowboy hats, knives. I'm like, where? And you're like, in a brownstone in Brooklyn. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? And, we went out there and the guy he had tons and tons of stuff. And I was amazed by that. And it was a situation where the man had passed away and the son, didn't want the stuff anymore. And I'm sure you see that a lot. And that happens a lot where the son was just not into, the Western stuff. But this is a brownstone that had, Civil War knives and swords and thousands of books. And it was literally a storage locker full of stuff. So that's part of your business plan, is to try to find these things and then preserve what you can preserve, buy what you can buy, and then resell.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, and it's not just the private collector or the collector looking to get rid of, or, I mean, sometimes it's in plain sight. I mean, it could be on the internet, it could be on eBay, it could be on an auction site. Like we have different companies for various aspects of what we do, like with the kids, and my brother Bob, we kind of have our own company, which is picking under your nose, because literally we go to where the pickers have picked and go to, say, an antique mall, and then we basically buy our way out of it. Like, you can find things every day on auction sites online, and then you can do, auctions live where you attend them, or you can simply just, hunt a garage sale, or like, I don't particularly want to crawl through a barn,
Right.
but I'm not opposed if I had to. You just kind of have to be open-minded that collectors, we're all kind of weird, so we do weird things, like, but we all are in the same business, whatever you're collecting, of preserving enjoying an artifact and kind of stewarding it until you go. Like once I'm gone, who's going to pick up the ball and kind of preserve that artifact? It's not the museums, really. The museums, we were just down in DC. It was the biggest disappointment for my kids. There was nothing real. There was hardly anything out. And most of it is kind of not even factual if you kind of start scratching through. And it's presented where you can actually just go online and see items and get as much of an education off of a view off the internet. To go to the museum was kind of a big letdown for my kids, because my kids want to hold a gun from Custer Battlefield. It's lying on my floor right now.
Sure.
But then you go to the museum and they don't even have the real guns there.
But they have like a replica saying this is what a facsimile of what,
they might have had a gun might not be the best example, but like paperwork from the Revolutionary War, you've got a reproduction of the piece of paper.
Sure.
Dinosaur bones, most of them are cast. They're not even real.
That's very true. I was very disappointed. I went to the Trenton Museum years ago, the State Museum in Trenton, New Jersey, and a lot of this stuff was cast. And I was like, I want to see like a real New Jersey based dinosaur bone. And they're like, well, the fibula is real, but everything else isn't. And I'm like, oh, that's like not cool. I mean, it's not, that's not fun.
So, and then I'm in dinosaur country. So my bartender found one of the best preserved Tyrannosaurus Rex. His name was Michael Zimmershot. If you look it up, he was on a class trip and found like the finger bone, and it turned out it was one of the most complete skeletons ever. And this is just a guy that walks down the street to say hello. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. And if you want to see real dinosaur bones, you just go to the Gemso in Tucson in February. You'll see a full-on Tyrannosaurus Rex sitting in a hotel lobby, and it's $8 million. If you got $8 million and a place to put it, buy it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're starting off in this, like if somebody's like, hey, I'm really interested in, like for me, it's, for Rob, it's guitars. Rob's got more guitars than anybody, more than music stores. For me, I like guitars. I have some knowledge of guitars. I like mid-century modern furniture. I like that stuff. Where do you start? If you're somebody, for me, I think it's part of what you're interested in, but what made you choose your subject matter, and how would somebody else start in getting involved in this?
I mean, look, I've gone through phases where I've collected one thing versus another. I'm at the point where I buy and sell everything I can make money on, or think I can make money on. Because there's times I don't make money. I lose money. You'd be foolish to say you're going to make money every day, but you start with what you like. Like I collected World War II stuff when I was in high school, and World War I kind of military pins and buttons and medals, and they were kind of rare. Today they're more common. The internet helps you find it, but then you kind of have to educate yourself. Like you could do pocket knives or marbles. Like you had the marble guy, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, Gary Williams, man. Gary Williams made his fortune on German glass marbles.
Yeah. Which is
who would have
thought?
Who would have thought he made millions of dollars? But I learned a lot from him. One time he called me up and he said, hey, there's a great antique show in Atlantic City. Do you want to come with me? Really, he needed somebody to help him carry his shit. But that's how you learn, right? So I went there, and there was everything and I was amazed. There was one guy that he just had bags of dimes. And I said to Gary, so what is it with these fucking dimes? Like this guy's got billions of dimes here or whatever it was. And he goes, well, some of them are silver. So you have to go through like these bags, or maybe all of them are silver, or maybe they were nickels, whatever they were. But I was just amazed. And then there was other people that it was artwork, and other people that it was knives. And I'm like, man, you can really collect anything. And Gary was he had his certain things that he was expert in, that he felt comfortable in buying. He was great. And he bought all kinds of shit. And he goes, I might keep this in my barn. He had a conditioned barn. So it wasn't like a fucking barn with holes in the ceiling. It was like a steel building, metal structure. He's like, I might sell it. He goes, I might decide one day I'm going to sell all 300 paintings that I have. And and, list them on eBay or do whatever. And I was just amazed at that. And I learned a lot from carrying around stuff. And he bought everything. He bought art, he bought dimes, he bought jewelry, you name
Right.
it. I mean, and it was very interesting. I'm addicted to right now to the auction sites. I'm addicted to like Alderfer
Yeah.
auctions.
Yeah.
Oh man, they're local. They're like maybe 40 minutes from my house. And I'll
Yeah.
go on that online thing. I was making money, bro. I was buying, had a client that he had American flags on the wall of his office. And I was like, oh, you're really into American flags? He goes, yeah, man, because I'm trying to, I said, listen, I'm really into auctions. If I see American flags, tell me what your parameters are. I'll buy them and I'll sell them to you. I said, I said, you can look up the prices. I'm going to make 20% off you. And he said, all right. He goes, I think that that's fair. And he goes, he wanted like 47, 48 star flags. That's all he wanted. Right.
Really?
And I said, okay. I said, no problem. I said, so Alderfer ended up having like 5 or 6, like 47, 48 star flags for auction. I ended up getting like 3 of them. So I don't know if I spent, call it $1,000 on these 3 flags. I sold them to him for like $1,200. And he's like, thanks, keep them coming. I'm like,
Right.
this is freaking great. I learned all about the flags. And one of the flags had like a little flag that came with it. That was, the lady gave it to me for nothing. She goes, this was in the lot. It just wasn't in the auction. So you could take it. I was like, sounds good to me. And I learned a lot about it. But then I got into like going on Alderfer all the time. So now I literally, like before I go to sleep at night, I'll go on there and I'll say, oh, let me see what the new auction has. Let me see what this, like I like crockery. Christine fucking hates crockery. So I have it in the garage. She absolutely hates it. But I'm like, I love this because this blue stamp means that it was made in Alabama in 1906. And she's like, throw that shit in garbage. And I'm like, no. I said, Tom's coming to pick it up. She's like, yeah, right. I'm like, yeah. I said, eventually one day he will. But in the meantime, see, I like it because I know a little bit about it. But Alderfer, I'm like addicted to looking at it all the time. And sometimes you can find some stuff. I bought some nice artwork on there. I bought, oh, you know what else I made money on? That was cool too. I bought some sports memorabilia on there. And I know another guy's a big Steelers fan. I bought any Steelers thing that I could find on that thing.
Right.
And I put it all together as a lot. And I said to this guy, so this is an autographed football from like some obscure Steelers guy. And I got this jersey and I got this, got that, $1,000. And the guy was like, yeah, all right, that sounds good. And I was like, sounds good to me. I don't know if I spent like 600, 700 and I learned all about it. I'd say, I kind of did it. So I'm really into that. Now I'm into watches too. So like, I don't own any expensive watches, but I'm like, I watch the videos of the guys on TikTok negotiating watches. I'm like a whore. Like I have to watch that. You know what I mean? I'm like addicted to it. So, but that's part of it's the thing. Now you do a lot of smalls, right? Isn't that like what you've based your business on? Would you say?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things, and again, going back to like, what do you start with? You kind of have to start with, well, what can you store before you become a hoarder? So, so like in the Native American world, some people collect full-size moccasins. Some people collect kid-size moccasins. Some people collect, cradle boards, or you would call like a papoose, but it'd be like a cradle board that's a toy size. Some people collect the originals that are 40 inches. So, you kind of have to pick kind of what you can tolerate. And then again, get research books and kind of, educate yourself. And then you have to detect the fakes because they fake everything.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. That was my next question. How do you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like in my world, I spent, like early on in the industry, I would go to shows with somebody, like you said, the marble guy, and I would just trail him for 3 days.
Right.
And then all I did is ask questions and touch material. And in one weekend, I probably touched more material than most collectors probably touched in 10 years. And then by the end of the first year, I probably touched more material than most collectors in their lifetime, just by going to, shows in the area that I was focusing in. But smalls, so like, like now, like my thing has been for a while, like tobacco tins, like, and the pocket ones, a little square, like Prince Albert in a can. But there's probably hundreds of different varieties that you can kind of buy. And there's a market for it. If I buy something and I don't like it, I wait till I find a better, like if you get one like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 5. I can wait till one comes up on eBay or an auction that I buy that's a 7, and I'll take my 5, I'll plop it on eBay and sell it, because
Yeah,
someone's going to
sure.
buy it. So, and the hardest thing I think as a collector, and I remember it very much so, was the first time as I changed from, say, collector to dealer and
Right.
sold my first item, because it was like I was like parting with one of my children, I thought, you know.
Sure.
Um, but eventually I sold it and I made some money, and then I bought something else 5 minutes later. And as I was walking down the hallway with it, I'd literally paid $2,000 for like this beaded bag. And I walked down the hall and the guy asked me, where did you get that? I'm like, oh, I got it. And down a couple floors. And he's like, well, how much you want for him? Like, I don't know, 2,500. And he goes, I'll take it. And like, I made $500 in like under like 5 minutes. And I
It's
said,
great.
man, this is great.
It's good business, man. This is a great. And
Exactly.
when you do a business like this, it's interesting because people would think, who the heck is buying this stuff? There's a huge market for everything. I used to work with this guy, Brian, and he would collect vice, like the vices, like like you mount on your workbench, like that vice.
Yeah, vices. Yeah.
And I wanted to clarify that so people didn't know it was like some crazy shit. And he would go and we would do these house clean outs, and guaranteed there was a vice. And he would be,
Yeah.
dude, just take all the fucking vices and then we'll meet up once a week. And if I sell them, I'll throw you a couple bucks. I said, all right, that's cool. This guy was making, but some of those things are really valuable. And I'm like, who the fuck buys this stuff? And he goes, bro, I said the same thing. He goes, next thing you know, I'm like the vice underground of,
Right.
guys buying and selling vice grip things. And I'm like, this is the most insane, crazy
Yeah.
shit. And that's when I really got into it. But talking to you, then I was doing these house clean outs, and I would always probably go to house clean outs before anybody. And I would look at them and I would say, let me see, if these guys have any toys in here, or they have,
Right.
any whatever. And I would say not always, but more often than not, like I was pissed because I was doing some work for this company in Philadelphia, and I'm just a subcontractor. So the project manager goes there first, and he found 2 egg chairs, right, that are shaped like eggs, but they were from the 1960s. I can't remember the name of the brand off the top of my head, but they were legit, like from the 60s egg chairs.
Wow.
And the damn thing is he sold them for like a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
He goes, there was like a bidding war on eBay or whatever, marketplace or whatever the hell he sold them at. And I'm like, motherfucker, man. I said, I wish I would have been able to have access. I would have put that shit right in the back of my car. That would have been the end. That would have been the end of that.
Well, you think about these house clean outs, like my kids learned really early because they were doing it with me when they were like 11 and 13.
Mhm.
And we'd go in and like every garage has what? A license plate in it.
Yeah.
Always. Every garage we had a license plate or more. And every garage, every license plate my kids pick up, I go, it was $10 because we sell Wyoming and South Dakota license plates all the time. And it would be funny because here you're getting paid $30 or whatever a cube to just pick it up and get rid of it. And then we were getting $10 just because we put that to the side, knowing that we would get someone to buy it. And like if you get on eBay and start searching, like the one way to quickly learn about items is you go to eBay,
right?
You figure out what you like. In this case, go to license plates like we're talking about, then go to what's sold, and then reverse search it by the highest price. And just look at whatever the highest price, license plate is. It doesn't matter what category, you do the same thing. And you're all of a sudden, you're educated as to what to look for when you're at the antique mall.
Now you're an expert.
Now you're an expert because all you have to do is look for whatever's the highest price and then look for it to be unmarked. I mean, like literally, like it's weird because like my kids will come to me as we kind of pick the malls and they're like, what about this tobacco tin? Well, you're in booth number 1, it's $60. Well, 10 booths later, there's the same tobacco tin. It's $40. Look, I didn't do anything other than wait and find $20 off. Sure. And then by the time you've done the whole mall, there's some guy in the back that's got one in his booth for $10. Well, you know that the $10 too low and the $60 too high, and 40 is probably really the number. And you just had an education just seeing where the different prices are, and you buy the one at $10. and sell it to the idiot that wants 60 for his because he thinks he's going to make money. Just
Yeah.
get rid of it. So, but really, that's what I have my kids do is like when we're on eBay, because they buy and sell is, what is the highest price? What's the going rate? And see if you can buy something undervalued at an antique mall and make money. And
I think
it
your
works.
kids had an interesting education from you on this because this was part of their actual education or like, because they were homeschooled, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So this was part of their actual, like they learned about history by physically touching historical objects, which is fucking.
I got pictures of them holding Pancho Villa's gun at a gun auction house in town.
And then you learned you probably taught them all about Pancho Villa, all about the Mexican Revolution, all about that whole period in time where most knuckleheads probably don't know any of that.
They don't even know who Pancho Villa is for that matter. Yeah. So, I mean, like when Michael was young, we, again, part of the, let him learn what is interesting to him. He got into the Titanic. So where'd he end up? At the Titanic exhibits.
Sure.
And then you can see artifacts from the Titanic.
Sure.
But yeah, like, so, like it was literally put a pin in a map and, we went to, cause we kind of collect, general store kind of 1920s, 1880s kind of artifacts like bottles, glass, crates, whatever. And, there was the wreck of the Arabia in Kansas City. We literally put a pin in a map. And it was a steamboat that went down in the 1850s, and everything was pretty much perfectly preserved in underground, and then brought out in the 1990s. And then they kind of preserved everything, including the clothing. Like they actually had the pickles in the pickle jar were still preserved, where you can actually still eat them.
Wow!
And yeah, it was wild. And we were there on we put a pin in a map. And we drove there to see it, and where everyone's kind of looking at maybe the history, and it's kind of we're looking at, oh my God, that pocket knife that everyone says no Civil War pocket knives existed with 4 blades. Well, guess what? They're wrong. In 1850, the riverboat went down and it preserved its cargo, and there was a whole bucket of pocket knives on there that had 4 and 5 blades.
4 or 5 blades.
Right. So you learn right away that, okay, like let's say, Green River Knives have an XYZ number of pins, and these are companies that produce this kind of stuff. Again, someone might say, well, no, that didn't come around to the 1890s. Well, guess what? It was around in 1856 because I saw on the wreck of the Arabia in Kansas City, and we know that it was from 1856. So
did you ever watch the show Ancient Apocalypse? It's on Netflix.
I don't think so.
It's Graham Hancock, and he's very famous for going on Joe Rogan, but he's like a real contrarian about like when there was an ancient apocalypse and there was like this grand society, and then there was an ancient apocalypse, and then it kind of all started over again. And a lot of people, a lot of archaeologists, which is what your story reminds me of, say, oh, no, that's impossible. And there's this, like the books, this is the way it happened. And then they banned this guy, like they outlawed him. And so now he's on Netflix. Netflix gives him a special. Everybody's up in arms. Like all the academics wrote letters to Netflix saying, bro, you can't have this guy on Netflix. Got to take the show off Netflix. Got to put disclaimers on Netflix. But everything he's saying is just as potentially true as everything that the academics are saying. And it's just like what you're saying now. Like, oh, there's no 4-blade pocket knives from the Civil War. Well, here's one right here. I'm looking at this 4-blade. Like it's here. You know what I mean? It came off of the sunken ship that it was on. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the stuff that I think is interesting. I find that to be really, really fascinating when you've proven the establishment wrong. I think that's interesting.
Well, we found that violin, and it was in a flea market. Michael found it. He's a 14-year-old kid, likes to play violin, maybe 15, I guess.
Right.
No, he's 14, but literally likes to play violin. So he sees a violin in a pile of crap at a flea market.
Right.
And there were other antique dealers there kind of looking for the deals. And Michael comes up to me and goes, Dad, that violin says like 1690 in it or whatever. I'm like, what? And I go, are you sure? And I go, does it say copy? He goes, no, it's got a guy's name in it. He goes, because he's got good eyes.
Right. Sure.
So
He's a
I
kid.
like you need these, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
So I go, are you sure? Because let's take a look. So the guys that were there that we knew that were other dealers, I go, do you see that violin? He goes, yeah, how pretty funny. Did it say Stradivarius in it? And I'm like, well, just because
Uh,
it says Stradivarius doesn't mean that it's not valuable. But this guy wanted $150 for this violin.
right.
And the guy's name was Matthias Klotz. And so I said to Michael, before we get excited, because look, it's $150. Let's look up who this person is. Well, we get on the internet, and about 5 minutes later, I find who Matthias Klotz is, and he was the founder of the Klotz family violin makers in Wittenberg, Germany. There's statues of him, and it turns out, they were Luthers until 1980s, but
Wow.
this one is clearly labeled, from the like 1700, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I've got the label. Well, let's go see what happens. So kids and I decide we're going to partner in it together. So we came up with, let's offer the guy $100. So I said to Michael, this is how you got to play it out, teach him how to kind of negotiate. And he offers the guy 100. He says no. Michael takes the $100 bill out finally and says, it's cash. The guy says no. He goes, so, and again, I told Michael, get on it, play it a little bit, look disappointed, put it back down, we'll walk away, and just say $100 is our offer, and we'll start walking away. And sure enough, the guy says, all right, I'll take $100.
Right.
Because now you're looking at a violin for $100, whether it's fake or real, who cares? It's kind of a fun story.
Right.
So I kind of contact a couple of large auction houses, and right away I get the expert who goes, well, I can tell from the picture whether it's real or not, which usually tells me the guy's not going to tell me anything.
Yeah.
I also contacted the Wittenberg, Germany division where they have Klotzes on file, and I got the same kind of response. It just seemed too unlikely that a violin would end up in a flea market in Rapid City, South Dakota for $100.
Sure.
So I sat on it for a little while, and I decided to send out a sliver of the bass line to get it forensically radiocarbon dated.
Get out of here.
Oh no, this is 100% true. So we got a company, I think it's in Washington State, who then did it. And there's some kind of weirdness based on its age, to where with radiocarbon dating prior to, I think, whatever date, it's like 16 something or 1700, right around that time frame. It can hit variable areas. Like it might hit 1950, it might hit 1850, and it might hit 1550, but it has to do with however the carbon is. And I'm not an expert on it, but when we did it, like a living tree will register its last breathing moment before they would have hacked it down.
Right.
So we have a label, and I got a radiocarbon dating that says 1690, which would have been right around the time when that thing would have been manufactured. So when I talked to the folks, I said, well, they're like, well, it could be this date or it could be this date. We can't really tell because of these timelines, unless you have a secondary supporting piece of information that says it's from that time frame. I go, I have a label in a violin that says it's from 1690. And they're going, well, then it's from 1690.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? Because again, like a forger isn't going to use wood from 1690 because
of course
radiocarbon dating wasn't invented back then.
Right, of course.
So now it was up to the experts to prove me wrong because I had the science. So their opinion doesn't matter anymore. I've got a real Matthias Klotz violin that we got restored.
Wow.
That cost us $100. And every one of the pickers that I worked with that day all passed it up because they're like, that's nothing. We just took the extra step of validating the archaeology.
Wow. So you had it restored. How much did you end up restoring? How much did you pay to restore it? And did you end up selling it?
No, we still have it. Michael plays it now. And again,
oh, wow.
Like it's, the kind of funny part about it is, even, I don't know if there's a fancy term for violinists, probably is, but other people that play violin, they still don't even believe, even though we have all that how can possibly like a now 16 or 17-year-old be playing a violin from the 1600s?
How do you think it found its way to Rapid City, South Dakota? How do you think that happened? Like, have you had, do you have any
I think
clue?
it's extremely plausible. There's a huge population of German and Scandinavian and
Sure.
folks of that kind of descent out this way. And you would think anyone that would have come out this way in the 1800s, they probably would have come to Pennsylvania first or somewheres on the East
Sure.
Coast. And, at the time, it would have only been 50 years old if it was the 1850s, or, well, it would have been 150 years old, I guess, at that time. But I mean, it would still have been something that people would have been using. You wouldn't
Right.
have thrown it out because it wasn't a disposable society at the time.
Right.
And then you would have passed it to the next generation, who then, as they're coming through, it was probably the only thing the immigrant brought from Germany with them, other than the clothes on their back. And
Right.
then it would have been kind of passed down to when they homesteaded out here. It probably sat in a closet for 100 years because the thing was so well played that, like, like part of it was cracked. And again, condition made a lot of collectors steer away from it, which is where you had to get the cracks kind of back in line.
Yeah.
The varnish was worn up from just years and years of playing, where the chin touched the chin rest. But the whole idea was that it was very plausible that it probably had sat out here, probably in someone's closet. And if someone just recently passed, it ended up in an estate sale, which again, no one would have looked it up.
Right.
And, again, the internet wasn't around so that anyone would have cared to even look. And so that's the advantage we have as collectors today, is more and more stuff gets put on the internet that you can research and find the archaeological history of the artifact. And that's what I love to do. So
What's the coolest, like, where you're like, wow, this is like really fucking cool. Like, I'm shocked that you had told me about a rain jacket. That was something that I thought was cool. Is that like the coolest thing you've ever found? Or like, is there something that really just jumped out at you? I remember when I was working at Habitat for Humanity, we had so many people donate stuff to Habitat. We had 2 trucks that
right,
all day long, they would just go and pick up furniture, whatever. People would send us a picture and we would literally say, if it was in good enough condition that we could resell it, we always said yes. And
right,
some
right,
shit we just wouldn't pick up, like pianos and bullshit like that, unless it was a Steinway. Like, we're not doing it, right? So the Habitat opened at 8 o'clock in the morning, but from 7 to 8, we would let like private buyers come in. And these were
right.
guys that really supported Habitat for Humanity, but they were resellers and they were true experts, mainly in furniture. And I learned a
Right.
lot about furniture from these guys. They would come in from 7 to 8. Some of them were interior designers. Some of them were buyers for interior designers, whatever. And these guys would come. And I remember one day, guy comes in, and his name is Christian. He owns Spartan Antiques in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And he looks at this table and 6 chairs and he goes, "Am I the first guy here?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You're pretty much always the first guy here." But yeah, so it's him and his dad. And they said, "We want to buy this table and chairs from you." I said, "I literally know nothing." I didn't even like, I was trying to get ahead of them. Why would, like, the night before, I would look at what came off the truck and I would try to
Right.
look up everything because I wanted to at least be intelligent enough to say, hey, this is an actual X piece of furniture or whatever. I didn't get a chance to do that on this. They said, "All right, we want to give you $5,000 for this." I was like, that's like the single largest sale in Habitat for Humanity history at the
Right.
restore. I'm like, $5,000. So first of all, it made me a little leery. I was like, $5,000, is this really worth 10 or 15? Right. And I said, look, I said, you guys come in here and you spend those guys were good for like $1,000 a day. Every day on
Right.
average, those 2 would come in and spend $1,000 a day on average. I said, you know what? I'm going to sell to these guys for $5,000, but I need to know the history. And it was like some, Revolutionary War,
Yeah.
like it,
Louis
I
the
never,
14th.
whatever.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I was like, they're like, and we're going to take it now. Like, we don't even want the other guys to look at it. And some other guys, they came in there and they didn't even know what it was. Like, they were like,
Right.
not my style. I like mid-century modern. I
Yeah.
like this. I like that. So you get some of that too. And so I followed up with them. I was like, hey, how much you guys end up selling that for? They said, we sold it in a furniture auction in South Jersey and we doubled the money.
Right.
And I was like, hey, good for you. You know what I mean? I said, that's great.
You,
I was
you can't
happy for
worry
them.
about that.
You can't worry about it, right? We made
No, you can't. You know what? I
$5,000.
mean, like, if a guy spent his whole life learning
Good for
about
him.
values and he's able to double his money as a buyer and seller, like, look, you don't want to be taken advantage of, but really when you're picking, you're kind of like the picker is kind of hoping he's smarter than the person he's buying from.
Sure.
And when it
And these
goes,
guys were solid, Tom. They came in all
yeah,
the like they were there they were like one of these groups of people that would come in and all these guys bought different stuff. I mean, this one guy's name is Mr. Canty,
right,
older guy. He had a contract with the city of Trenton where he would furnish apartments for like low income housing. People would bring a voucher in to his store. He had a store. He'd
right,
come in and he'd be like, I'll buy all your recliners for like $50 each. We'd be like,
right.
okay, because people donated them. They were dog shit, you know what I mean? But man, Mr. Canty boy, he'd come in there, he'd buy them all. He got a couple of guys with him. They loaded up in the U-Haul truck that he had, this old broken down U-Haul. And he'd do. I had another lady, she had an import-export business in Gambia.
Oh wow,
And she wanted to buy all of the appliances, refrigerators, and mainly refrigerators and stoves. So we had Princeton University redid graduate school housing. They donated 200 refrigerators, 200 stoves, 200 dishwashers. And
wow.
I said, this lady, I said, look, I'll sell them all to you. I said, we're going to bring them right in Habitat and put them right in your truck. She's like, don't even bother. I'll come and pick that shit up right at Princeton University. And that's what she did. And I was happy for her. We were getting $50 a thing and they were free to us. And we were getting
Right.
$50 a thing. And I hope she's shipping them to Gambia or wherever she was shipping them to. I hope she's making 100.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but
Look, I
there's
mean, it's
money in all of that stuff. And that's what always amazed me. It took me time to learn that, but that's what always amazed me.
yeah. I mean, it's like in our relationship, you and I, like I have you looking, and it's easy to send me a text. Hey, Tom, is this worth anything? Well, yeah. Like how much? I've got people on the East Coast who look for Native American jewelry.
Sure.
They send me a text. I'm like, it's not hard. And look, I mean, the shop owner is kind of the guy that has to make the money,
Sure.
right? So like if you buy a ring for $25 and I buy it for 30, but then I put 60 on it, am I screwing you? Well, no, because
No.
look, I got to pay utilities and I got to pay insurance and I got to let it sit in my store and heat the store and cool the store. There should be, if you made $5 or $6, you made 20% on your money and you only owned it for 30 seconds. Like who's getting
Yeah.
screwed?
Right.
you know?
I had this
So
heated conversation with Christina about this, where I think it was last year, was a year before. Guys were buying PlayStation 5 or whatever the heck it was. They were buying them online. Like you had to wait like in a virtual line for like
right.
Walmart. And then you could buy one. And then they were buying them for 500 and like selling them for $800 or $900. So I said,
Right.
well, fuck, I said, I got nothing to do. I'm going to sit in this virtual line one night and see if I can get one of these. And she's like, well, if you buy it for $500, you're taking advantage of somebody else. I said, are they sitting in the virtual line with me? She's like,
Right.
no. And I said, are they like, it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm in the virtual line at Walmart. You know what I mean? Like, where are they? And I
Yeah.
said, I'm providing a service. And the guy who's really, I think was really good at it is my son Chase, where he was buying and selling guitars. And he
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
really good at it because he got really into and he still does. And now he's gotten he's gotten really caught up in doing the heating and air conditioning and Votech, but he was really into and he does some buying and selling too, still guitars. He would really educate himself on the guitar and he would do
Right.
trades and he would do this. And I'm like, I'm not letting you talk to any adult. I will drive you to wherever you need to go. And we'll meet in like the police. I know every police department, bro, from Flemington, New Jersey down to whatever. I'm like meeting the Flemington Police Department parking lot. And I remember the one guy said, well, I'm a cop. And I was like, then you'll have no problem meeting me in the police department parking lot. Because you don't
Yeah.
know, you got $1,000 in cash. And then I got towards the end of doing it recently, I started like I'll PayPal the guy right on the spot.
Right.
And
Right.
I'll send it right to the guy, or if I'm opposite, he'll send it to me right on the spot. And this way, there's no cash. You don't have to worry about getting mugged or getting worried about any of that kind of stuff because you don't know. You know what I mean? If it's
Right. Right.
some crazy people, and we've done a lot of good trades. We've met some very interesting people in these situations where professional musicians, or I had one on eBay. I had a Les Paul or Gibson, maybe it was, and it was a guy that was he was a guitar player in a famous band who was he has hundreds of these guitars. And every time one pops up on eBay, he buys it. And I
Right,
thought
right.
it was great. You know, I thought that was like, so you meet a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
So your thing is what, Nate, and I'll go back to the question again. Is there anything that's really wowed you where you were like, damn, like this is like, you know, Pancho
I
Villa's
mean,
gun, but this is also like
well, yeah,
Jimi
like,
Hendrix's guitar or something, you know what I mean? Kind of thing, you know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. There's lots of things. I mean, my brother, Bob, he's probably a good candidate to kind of maybe get the two of us on so you can see
Oh, that
some of
would be
that
fun.
dynamic. But like he's found some better stuff than me, like just off the charts. But I don't know if anything sticks out. Like I found a Civil War knife that has, like the guy's, he was a brigadier general. He was
Oh, that's cool.
Confederate. He was killed at the Battle of the Wilderness, and that was kind of at a store one day. And again, the guy that sold it to me didn't really know what it had on it, so like I don't believe it to be anything as it was presented, because again, it was kind of pre-internet. It's not like it's Robert E. Lee.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
someone so obscure from the Louisiana that like who would ever fake this, because it would be like, like, are you going to fake $1 bills or are you going to fake $100 bills?
Great
So
question. I would fake 20s just to let you know, because I don't think
yeah,
anybody checks that shit, but that's just
right.
that's just me.
Yeah, but that's true,
If
right?
I were
mean,
going to fake bills, you know what I mean? Not
yeah,
committing any crimes here. That's what I would do. I'm always interested in guitars. I'm
yeah.
interested
Well,
in
you made me
music.
buy one just because you were into them, so I started looking, and I
You
got in
should.
our store. We have a Fender Stratocaster, I think from 1974.
Oh my
Just
God.
Yeah, and it's hanging up in a wall, it's got like a sunburst finish. Very
If
nice.
you want to learn anything about guitars, Rob, who's the owner of Rob's Custom Shop, who's the sponsor of the show,
Yeah.
Rob knows everything about fucking guitars.
I don't know. I don't know about I don't
No,
know
bro,
about everything.
you
I know a lot.
undercut yourself. You
I
know
know
a
a
lot,
lot.
bro. You
Yeah.
know a lot, and you can actually like play them, which is great, because
Yep.
there's guys that like I met it. Here's a crazy collector fucking story. When my son was in military school, he had no, it wasn't military school. I sent Austin to a summer camp in Massachusetts. And one of the guys in his summer camp, his dad was a famous executive, and the dad owned all kinds of guitars, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in guitars. Didn't know how to play a note, but he really, really loved guitars, and he really loved preserving them. And I remember he brought me to his office, and it's a drink company, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name or not. And he had the most gorgeous guitars, but all like pre-CBS, you know, Fenders, and just, but he couldn't play them, but he was just a real admirer
Right.
of those items. Whereas Rob's a talented guitar player, and he has some really cool. I'm in his house, and there's probably a good 40 guitars behind me. He has a house that maybe your house is like this, and it's the house that I want, where it's like he has his passion hanging throughout the house.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
like in here, and I don't want to.
You can tell. You can move the camera.
I'm going to move my camera. All right. So
Yeah.
look, so here's
Hold on.
guitars behind me. And
Just
you can
move-
see
yeah.
this here.
Just
And then-
loosen the whole camera, and you can move it around.
And then here's, I'll show you on this side, and then Rob could show you his basement. And I'm an admirer of that, because I live with
Yeah.
Christine, and
Right.
it's a little bit of a difference. So you could see this is what's behind me. I'm in his living room. You know what I mean? So
Nice, yeah.
I'm in his living room, and I found that to have that passion about something, I think is fascinating. And that's the rest of his I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Bro, he lives like, one time I had a podcast from his bedroom, and I'm like, bro, you have 50 guitars in your bedroom. I'm like,
Right.
I want to be you, bro. Like, and like a poster of Eddie Van Halen. I'm like, bro, you're fucking awesome. Like, that's
Right.
what, you know what I mean?
Well,
So
you gotta be surrounded by greatness, right? I mean,
that's
you got to
the
be
truth.
surrounded by greatness, man. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
So
No.
like now I decorate my house, or redecorating my house. I'm like, I'm gonna hang a couple guitars here. And Christine was like, oh, what are you gonna hang a couple guitars in the living room here? And I said, yeah, I'm gonna put one on each side of this picture that we had commissioned painted a few years ago. She goes, it looks like Rob is rubbing off on you. And I'm like,
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because I want
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that, boo.
I'm like, I want to be him, bro.
So yeah, but so my brother Bob, he bought one of Frank Zappa's guitars at auction.
There you go.
And it was a Zappa family auction of everything. Zappa's one of his kind of inspirations. He's probably the only Western painter ever inspired by Frank Zappa. But
Probably.
it is,
Probably.
But he had a choice of everything, and the guitar is such a personal instrument, like these really famous players. And again, it's a piece of art where and I don't understand that world as much, but to me, like a sunburst, I can get why that's pretty. Like one in natural wood, I don't understand so much why that would be collectible necessarily, other than maybe the company name or what have you.
Sure.
But art is so much more. It's like cars, to me, a 57 Chevy is artistically incredible looking, but I own a 54 Chrysler. It's not really pretty, but that's why it's not $100,000 either.
Valid.
But when my son was at an auction the other day, they were auctioning off a B-26 bomber jacket.
See, I would like that.
Right. And there was every collector that could possibly be there. And I said to him, I go, the bomber jacket, I mean, it has the name of the pilot. He was a Silver Star recipient and a Distinguished Flying Cross recipient, and kind of a big deal. Fought in 3 wars, but all these collectors were there to buy, and the guy had his helmets, his medals, everything, and the bomber jacket sold for practically nothing. And my son Thomas bought it, and he'll quadruple his money, no doubt. And he bought this bomber jacket, and there was a picture of the guy on the airplane. Literally, I have it here. So hang on a second as I get it, because it's kind of
cool. Get it, because this is the stuff that's great. I enjoy this kind of stuff, and I enjoy the success that he's going to have with selling it.
So can you see this here?
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yes.
So there's a picture of this cowboy. He's wearing cowboy boots.
He's a cowboy.
He's on top of the hood, the nose of the airplane. It's a B-26. This is the guy wearing the jacket.
That's awesome.
And the name of the plane was hard to get, right?
That's awesome.
And he did something like 28 missions, a really odd number. But the thing is his helmet sold, his medal sold, and those are all personal items and cool. And my son calls me, goes, I got the jacket for $900, Dad. Nice. And it came with the picture. I go, great. You just bought Frank Zappa's guitar. Do you want the guy's helmet?
Right.
I mean, do you want Frank Zappa's lighter? You want the guitar that Frank Zappa played? Yeah.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
You want to buy stuff that you have a passion for. And Thomas kind of likes the World War II stuff. He likes the propaganda posters. Yeah. But it's the bomber jacket. He wore that every day. And here's a picture of him holding it. And here's the jacket.
I always find what I'm interested in doing, or what I'm interested in seeing, is that kind of stuff. I find that to be incredible. I mean, where you could find a really cool jacket. You could find with provenance, because that's the provenance now of where it is. And I find that to be incredible. So what he found was really next level kind of stuff, because it had the provenance in it. Rob is a great guitar player. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I try my hardest. And I don't say that just because I'm sitting in your living room. But that's the truth. I would say, for me, I find guitars to be really interesting. I find mid-century modern furniture to be really interesting. But we had some podcast guests on, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago. It was Carly C., who's an outstanding singer, and her husband, Mike, who I went to high school with, great guitar player, really interesting guy. And he said one thing. He said, whatever you do, decorate your house or whatever you do it in what makes you happy. There's no real right or wrong way. If you want to hang a guitar in your living room, by all means, hang a guitar in your living room. If you're really into World War II, posters, hang in your living room,
Right.
and that's something that I was never really good at. You know what I mean? But now, as I've gotten older and I've started to be motivated by, like, these guys all know everything. I'm motivated by what other people know that I don't know. So, like, for example, I think that what's his name is the best Batman. And we're going to have this conversation now.
They can't with him and the
Christian
Batman.
Bale.
Christian Bale's the best Batman. He's not the best Batman. He's the best millionaire. He's the best millionaire Batman.
But
you want to put Batman in categories like most likely to kill a bad guy would be Ben Affleck. He was like the biggest, strongest guy, the guy that looks like he can take care of business, right? Then you got like the coolest, like the billionaire when he buys the girls just swimming in the fountain in the restaurant and he buys the hotel. Christian Bale. That's the best rich guy.
Yeah, well, see, now you're talking to me. See, Adam West would be the best Batman.
The old school Batman.
Batman with a gut. You gotta love Batman with a gut, man.
Batman he could be your neighbor.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But here's the point of what I was saying. I didn't know that everybody else knew so much about it. Like, these guys have in-depth knowledge of that. They have in-depth knowledge of Nightwing. I'm like, who are these people, right? Exactly. And that's what really, really interests me. When you're looking at somebody and they're having a full conversation about, I have a friend of mine that owns Seasons Landscaping. It's a beautiful garden center landscaping thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's in Washington's Crossing, Pennsylvania. I love Dan and his sister Sue. They're wonderful. He is an expert in all things plants, all things exterior decorating, gorgeous, next level. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And you can have a whole conversation with him about a plant.
Yeah.
And one of the things that
plant pickers.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I'm looking at him like, this guy knows more about this fucking plant than I could ever imagine.
So, like, how I pick antique stores, my brother Bob was just telling me, one of the bartenders in this place that he lives in Cave Creek in Arizona, she spends the first hour of her day walking through Home Depot and Lowe's locally, looking for plants that are just put out by Lowe's and Home Depot. And like, just because the flower of a cactus might have little red speckles, it takes a $5 cactus and makes it worth $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
She's picking plants and you're going like, what? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Who knew? And that's when these guys started talking about, we had this all out debate about Batman. And I was like, I fucking I didn't think it was like all this, you know what I mean? But that knowledge to me is something that I find to be fascinating, and it's what you want to learn. You can learn cool things in school and you could do whatever. And Rob's a college professor. I'm going to be teaching at Mercer County Community College starting in January. And you could do that kind of education. But when you find something that you're really, truly interested in, books, furniture, guitars, whatever it is, and you really have this deep Batman, you really have this deep ingrained knowledge. Here's one for you that I never would have thought in a million years I would ever say. There are people who collect bongs. Now that weed is legal in New Jersey, there are people who collect high-end bongs. I said to my older son, he goes, "Oh yeah, that bong's like $1,500. What? Like, beyond anything I could comprehend. I was like, I remember bailing guys out for having like glass pipes and bongs like 10 years ago. Now people are collecting them and putting them on their mantles. I'm like, this is like, it's insanity. Cool. There's people who are experts in bongs. I'm like, this is the most crazy fucking thing I've ever heard. But again, I find it like the Frank Zappa thing. What a great story. And not if your brother keeps a guitar or he sells it. I mean, there's a price for everything, obviously, but that's a really, really cool story.
Well, so we homeschool the kids specifically so that, like you said, you take their interests. Then, like, we were able to go out as a group. They spend time with me. We go to an antique store. We buy what they like. Then, we list it on eBay. So, now you got the whole, like, how to list, how to sell, how to present it, how to photograph it, how to put the grammar correctly in so people read it. Then to sell it, then we can do a profit and loss at the end of the month and get them paid. And, they're paid to go to school as opposed to paying a school. They're making money while they're sleeping. I mean, the first thing Michael bought was an oyster tin, and we walked through, and oyster tins, believe it or not, are worth money. So we walked through, and I found a paint can size one, and it was basically $25. And I said to Michael, I go, you know what? Go ask that lady if she's got any wiggle room on it. No matter what she says, say okay.
Right.
Because I knew it was worth more, because I had the knowledge. So he goes and buys it. He got it for $20. We went online, we looked for it, couldn't find it, but we figured, you know what, we'll put it on for $45 and see what happens. And we went to bed. He woke up the next day, someone had bought it now for $45. He'd made $20 while he was sleeping.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah. So, and that's what got him interested in.
What I was happy with too, at least with my boys, is they learned a trade. And that was something that I thought was really important. My younger son, heating and air conditioning, although now he's talking about maybe being an architect. My older son works for me.
Is the one who's going to be an architect a good student?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
let me tell you that story, Rob.
Math, science, physics, all that good stuff. You got to know all that to be a good engineer.
A really good story. He doesn't want to be an engineer because he doesn't want to do advanced math, but being an architect, you only need to have like up to calculus 1. He says he could stomach that if he had to stomach it.
You got to go to pre-calc and calc. Yeah, pre-calc and calc. Usually they make you do pre-calc, calc 1 and calc 2. It's kind of like the same thing as being a doctor. Like to go to med school, you got to have calc 1, calc 2.
Right. And so he goes, he was in the going into the 11th grade. So he goes to his counselor, and the counselor says, "You looking to go to college? What are you looking to do?" And he says, "You know what? I want to go to Votech school." And the counselor says, "You're in the top 30% of your class. Or 20% of your class, whatever it was. Why do you want to go to Votech school?" And he goes, "Well, I'm interested in doing heating and air conditioning." And the lady was like, "All right, if that's what you want to do," signs him up for heating and air conditioning. He's going to graduate from high school this year. He's still in the top 20% or 15%, whatever it is. And now he has a trade. And he had the ability to say, "You know what? I'm interested in being an architect, or I'm interested in cybersecurity, or whatever." He has 20 interests right now, or I can go work doing HVAC. You know what I mean? But he has set himself up with important skills. You know what I mean? Where he's learned skills, how to do heating.
He said about here, there's an HVAC company for sale that the guy's got 4 kids that don't even want to do anything that dad's business is. And he's dying to sell his business to somebody.
What a shame that is right there.
And no competition.
What a shame.
Within 100 miles. Yeah.
What a shame. What do the kids do? Do you know?
They do what every millennial does. They watch video games all day, and they TikTok and YouTube. Or is that too broad?
That's very,
narrow. I'm an angry boomer at this point, right?
Listen, I think you can make money on that, but there's eventually a point where somebody has to know how to do something. And one of my plumbers, John.
You mean TikTok or that?
Listen, you can do TikTok and make money on it. You can do Instagram, make money on it, but somebody eventually has to learn how to do something, which is why you become a plumber. Right, my friend John was telling me he's a plumber. He said they only issued a handful of licenses in New Jersey last year.
No one wants to do physical trades anymore. No one wants to do physical trades.
That's the problem.
If you leave, when I teach my kids in college, I'd say one thing to them. A lot of them will ask me, like, what's a good job to have? Because part of what I teach computer concepts and office applications. So to know the ins and outs of a computer, how it works, why it works, what the standards are, and then other things related to Microsoft products. So really like what you would need to do when you have a business degree that you'd be able to navigate like a spreadsheet and all that good stuff. And I tell them when you get a job, you should only ever get a job in 4 areas: healthcare, education, trades work, meaning like a plumber, because the last time I checked, a robot never came over to change my toilet seat. No. And also then of course IT. If you have a job in one of those 4 areas, you will forever have a job. You will forever be valuable. And if you could somehow tie it in like I do now, where I do IT and I teach college, well, that's even better. That even better intertwines you into the world as we live in. Because all those things, if we had to leave the planet tomorrow and get on a spaceship, who would you want to bring with you? You wouldn't want a
Right.
bunch of millennials who are complaining about the crowded conditions. You want to be people who could fix toilets and people who could write computer programs and people who could make the life easier and better. That's the whole idea of technology, right? For us to do something that computers can do better, redundant work like robots, right? The reason why we have a robot, of course, a person could weld a bumper, but if a robot can automatically hold a 500-pound bumper and then weld it perfectly every single time the same way, that's why we have robots, right? To do work that we either can't do because it's too difficult, or it's it has to be a static way,
or don't want to do.
Yeah, or don't want to do. Well, a lot of people don't want to build cars. I mean, remember the days of people going out, with the, behind the shield and welding that, the welds are in uniform. The computer does it one way. The robots will only do it one way, which is perfect every single time.
Right.
My,
you know what I mean? Not to pick on millennials because they don't deserve it, like any generation, so that you can't really lump them all together. But, like one thing we haven't figured out is what do they collect, or do they collect, like getting back to that, and some of it is like, how many people when we were young collected, like I was the oddity, I did, but most of our age, it's something you do when you have that disposable money.
Exactly.
And then what are they going to collect is the next question. Like I said, bongs or whatever, like, I've sat in stores where all of a sudden they're collecting Star Wars,
Star Wars is
figures.
huge, bro.
Yeah. And I'm going like, wow, like I don't know anything about it. I'd probably pass on the best deal on the planet, but as my brother and I are looking at something from the 1860s and 1890s and oohing and on, because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
We were standing next to two guys at a checkout, and these guys were talking about a lightsaber on a Luke Skywalker that was worth $1,000, and we're like,
what?
I'm sorry, what? Like, like, and we look at each other like, oh my god, it just passed us. Like, like no one wants this old crap. They want the new stuff, and it's like the Beanie Baby fad, that's kind of a forced collectible. Like, you're talking, kind of collectibles that are real. And but again, trying to figure out what the younger audience is going to collect is, I think, like that's where I kind of changed my verbiage into I'm not collecting really, because I collect a very sensitive item. You have to look at yourself as a steward of the item, because that's really what it is. We're preserving it. We're investing in it, and then we're stewarding it to the next person when we pass. Because look, that item probably will outlive me.
Oh, sure. For sure. I think that millennial group, I think they're collecting vinyl.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I think they're collecting. And that vinyl has made a big comeback. I think
vinyl has been a thing for a long time. It's just been the older people. The younger people are just figuring out that vinyl does actually sound okay.
Yeah. And it's cool to have. It's cool to have like the liner.
Like, I mean, you can have a lot of bass in your thing and that sound like a rap song, because that's what you get. You get that bassier, tonier sound out of the, out of the albums.
I just think that that's something that they look at. My younger son goes to Princeton Record Exchange all the time. Yeah. And is buying vinyl, or like there's some vinyl on Alda for auction that I might try to pick up. So you find that kind of stuff, and I think that that's what that age group is collecting. I also think that they want to
actually got some vinyl the other day. Hold on, I'll show you.
Did you really? I also think that age group does something interesting too, where they buy. They just want it to be pre-done for them, and I think that that's interesting. Now you see, like this is cool
Very
stuff.
Nice.
It's a box set. I didn't open it yet, but it's the first 6 albums, and they have every single one has a special like backstage pass, like a laminate built into it. But I didn't even open it yet. But
we're gonna do an unboxing live on a Agliata show.
That's right, we're doing an unboxing. Yeah,
but this is stuff that's cool.
It has the box. The box is cool.
Yeah,
very nice.
I keep it like that. It has the first 6 albums, 180-gram vinyl, and it has all the extras in it.
That's
pretty cool.
Open that? Will you open that? Or
no, I probably won't. I'm gonna probably just the last time you'll ever see the light. I'll go back in here and I'll retape it, and that'll be it. It'll go back to sleep.
And you see, like, if you have like your Rob's passion is Van Halen, and he knows a lot about Van Halen and that period in rock.
Yep.
That's great. You know what I mean? So that's something that he found that he's obviously you can tell by how excited he is right now that he's super, super excited that he has that. It's like when you go to Princeton Record Exchange and you find that like odd 1970 something disco album that you're like, ooh,
Right.
nobody here knows what this is, but I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you go eat lunch, and then you have a nice morning in Princeton, and then you go about your business. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is
Yeah.
cool. And
Well,
it's
did
just a fun thing to do. You know what I mean?
Rob, did you look at any of the Eddie Van Halen stuff that went up for auction recently or no?
Yeah, I did. I saw some of it. Yeah, there was a lot of so this
Like,
guitar here.
Julian's had it up in Los Angeles. So
Yeah, so this guitar here was like 5150 is the one they used on 1984. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of these. There were about, I think he had about 10 or 11 of these versions. So they're all different, slightly different, but you know, Eddie has the original, obviously, and there's another one that says 1984 in the bottom. That's the backup, which Wolfgang has. But there were a lot of them that people either got, or they were like road worn, or they were like from Fair Warning tour, because he had this paint job back then.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's great. Like there's a guy out there from Fender that made like exact duplicates of the Frankenstrat, like exact, like 1971 quarter, like screwed in here. Every little hole was remanufactured. So if there's a screw hole he put in here, he put that screw hole in. And on the back of it, it had reflectors, and one of them was broken. He even broke it the same way. He took a little like chipping wheel. It looks. Eddie Van Halen said it played better than the original when he played it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
My son, we took one of his violins that we bought for $50, and he wanted to restore it. So I said, "Well, do something wild." It was my suggestion. So he did a copy of the Frankenstrat in the violin, in hopes to learn to play Eruption on the violin. You know,
there you go.
Kind of make it kind of wild and different, because you know you see a traditional string orchestra, everyone's got brown instruments, and he shows up with this red, Frankenstrat looking
That's
violin.
awesome. That's awesome.
Painted in Schwinn red, by the way. That's what it is. That's the color. Well, it was bicycle paint, and the only bicycle paint was out there was Schwinn. So Schwinn made a color named Schwinn red. So
wow,
that guitar was black, and he painted it white, and then took all the the tape off, and then you got what was the black and white. And then when he got sick of that one, he did have another one. He had a black, like they call it a bumblebee one. It was yellow, it had yellow stripes. But when Dimebag Darrell died, he was good friends with him. He put that guitar in his casket. The original guitar went in the casket with him. But he then turned that black and white one. All he did was painted it red. So if you look at the black and white one and look at the red one, you can see that it's clearly something else going on underneath the red.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. I mean, there's an artistry to that, something similar to that. I mean, just getting bored and just kind of reinventing it all over again, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. See, I like the fact that that when you buy something that someone like that touched, like I have a game worn Mariano Rivera jersey that he autographed. At some point in time, Mariano walked out on the mound wearing that fucking jersey.
Right.
And, being my favorite Yankee, it's amazing to say at some point in time, Eddie Van Halen touched that guitar. At some point in time, someone famous X. And I think that's like, that really solidifies the history of, I have my framed Mariano jersey. I have a game worn Steve Nash jersey. I was really into that for a while. I had a good contact at Steiner Sports that I was buying this stuff from, that I was getting it for a discounted price. So that person's not there anymore, but that was like money in a bank. But it's like fascinating that somebody touched, like I have an autographed Ted Williams photo. I'm by no means a Ted Williams fan, being a Yankee fan, but man, Ted Williams had a pen in his hand and he signed that picture back in whatever, in the 50s or whatever it was. That's like holy shittable. I was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? That's like when you find something.
Allman Brothers stuff like that,
that's awesome.
Same kind of thing. Yeah.
And and then when you find something that's like handmade Native American moccasins, like you got to be like, holy shit, sometime in 1850 or whatever it was, some ladies was sitting on the plains of Wyoming,
Right.
hand sewing these moccasins. You know what I mean? Like that's got to like blow you away,
You know, I think it's kind of harder in that because that's the fact, right? Like someone made
Right.
it was 150 years ago or whatever. But what's more exciting is when you find that artifact in a photograph from like the 1880s of somebody wearing those particular moccasins or
Right.
leggings, or maybe they're holding something that's distinctively like that was the item. Like, but
Right.
here, because like today people collect shoes, sneakers, right?
Right.
It's no different. We're just collecting turn of the century Buster Brown beadwork, right? But it's harder. Like I think you're right. It's kind of wild when you think about it. 100 years ago, someone was hand making this item.
Yeah.
But it's really satisfying when you can identify maybe who it was made for, wore it, or made it. That's really satisfying.
And that's amazing. And you have to say how it's really stood the test of times. I look at things today and I say, will this be collectible 100 years from now? And I don't know, because what people want to collect, like I have a friend, Scott, who collects sneakers, and he's got like 20 or 25 pairs, like really expensive sneakers that he tracks the price of on StockX.
Right.
And I'm like, this is fucking like, it's either brilliant or stupid. I said, I can't really quite figure out. I don't know what to make of it, because it's like he has these sneakers that are special sneakers. And it's like, is that something that's gonna like be collectible in the future? Is it going to be like stupid shit like sneakers versus?
Have you seen the Lego app?
No.
There's a Lego app where you could take the Legos and they all have a number, and you can enter the Lego piece into the app, and it tells you how much that piece is worth. And
get the hell out of here.
You can automatically list it. And then when people are looking to rebuild certain Legos and they need a certain number, if it's a rare piece, your Lego sells.
And that's what's collectible.
For like a little red triangle. Yeah, it's a Lego app. Yeah,
that's absolutely. See, I find that to be preposterous. I don't know how you feel about it, but I find that to be like the oddest thing. But it's also like what you like. So if you're really into Legos, I mean, then you probably think that's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you've been looking for that piece.
I mean, in our store, we have everything. I try to buy top tier of whatever is at the auction, because I know that there's going to be a guy walking in who collects, mechanical banks, or, like I said, violins, or like something in the petroleum world, or signage, or beer pieces. Not just the fact that we have our focal point, like, and that's kind of like, with Rob's house, you've got 50 guitars on the wall. Well, for the guy that doesn't have the luxury of going to buy a giant building like we did,
right?
Well over 100, but it's not a problem for me. Well over 100, but it's not a problem.
Yeah, but my wife, I could put some of my collectibles up, but some of them she doesn't want to look at.
True, but it's in one area that it's now all in the podcast area, pretty much.
Yeah. I'll give you that. So. I'll give you that. Hey, Tom, tell me about your store, because you bought a place and you had to really remodel it. And I remember you telling me about like it went from disaster to what it is today.
Yeah. So the building I bought on, like we were just talking about this yesterday, Bob and I, because we were talking about Craigslist. Like, and what's amazing about Craigslist, just on a side note, is in 25 years, it's never moved with the internet. It looks exactly as it did 25 years ago.
Scary as shitty as it looks, it's still that shitty.
Yeah, exactly.
Like no one even cared to put out a GUI at all. Like, let's not even put out a graphical user interface. Let's just make it look like it's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's actually cool. Is it cool now, or is it just ultra lazy? I'm trying to figure out what. And they do millions and millions of dollars of action through that site.
It's crazy, isn't it? And
it's insane.
Well, the building that I bought was on Craigslist, of all places. And it was in Belfouche, South Dakota. And it turns out it was a store from the turn of the century that in the 1928, 29 got converted to a JCPenney until it was a JCPenney until 1986, when pennies moved into the malls as they grew. And then, of course, it got phased out and it had multiple facelifts, but it kind of got deteriorated into the 2000s. And when I bought it, it was just a shell. And I bought it with my kids, and that was kind of their project. Again, we homeschool. So that was I don't know enough about a car to fix engines. I kind of tell my kids, look, make enough money to hire a mechanic if your car breaks down. But, if you can figure out how to remodel your house or kind of build a sweat equity, like this is my world. Like in a mortgage world, I know how to do that. So we kind of bought this building and we remodeled it from the ground up. We replaced the tin from the turn of the century. We had to find a company out of Missouri that we were able to get, the actual kind of tin to match. We replaced the banisters, the spindles, the oak floors, the maple floors, and then we turned it into what's now our art gallery / store. It's, we have Black Hills Curio Company that's there. And then I have a guy that's Relic Diggers is on the main floor. And we have a mezzanine level, so it was 9,000, I think, square feet. And we've been just kind of slowly filling it with stuff just out of, kind of making it what it is, like buying stuff that we think we can resell. And then some of it is our own personal stuff that we just don't want to sell, but we want people to see it, which is kind of the collector world. So, but
yeah, and now didn't it have like storage spaces in the basement? I remember you and I talking about that. Wasn't it like they had like storage space in the basement and you're like, I think I'm going to get rid of these storage spaces. Then I might rent them for like $100 each. What did you do with that?
No, the space in the basement was, again, when it was a pennies, that was their catalog and most of the where you would get the material.
Right.
It was empty. So what we've decided to do is turn it into a storage unit so that this way, you have basically 2,500 square foot in the basement that's kind of dead. So we got the town to allow us to put storage units. We're actually in that last phase of finishing them up. So,
hey guys, hold on one second. My brother, hey Mike, I'm doing a podcast. My brother just called me from Shanghai while I'm on the podcast. So there he is. Hey Mike, you're on the podcast. Mike, I'm going to call you back after the podcast. I don't want to not answer you. All right.
25 minutes.
All right. Love you too. Oh, get the hell out of here. Goodbye. my brother's in Shanghai and I can't say anything good or bad about that because I don't want him to be disappeared.
Well, stop saying that and don't mention it at all anymore.
And now we won't mention it anymore, but we will,
so you got my text?
I will call him back later. Yeah. I sent it over to Rob. Put that back up again. If you don't mind. Joe, I interrupted the podcast with that. That's badass. So if you show up, at an event with that, they would think that it says two things. First of all, it's badass. Second of all, you better know how to play the damn violin. If you show up with a violin like that, you better not be like the beginner intro student. You know what I mean?
We just did it for fun. We tried to. You didn't do an exact copy, but we did the best we could. So.
Well, that's pretty good. I like it's pretty interesting.
But imagine if you show up and you can't play with that. Like, oh my God, come on, bro.
I like how even the headstock is painted red too. That's nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he bought that, it was into 3 pieces. So like the fingerboard was loose, the top neck was gone, and it was just the body was cracked. And he restored, kind of YouTubed, again, like these tools weren't available when we were young, but he YouTubed how to do it and did it. So
you can YouTube how to do anything. I mean, it's fucking nuts. Like
it's good, but it's amazing. But that's great.
Yeah. It's crazy that you could do that. I mean, back in the day, we could never be looking at that like, duh, like, what the hell? But then it was also, now everybody knows everything about everything, or at least they think they know everything about everything, which is cool. Do you have a lot of
read my restaurant reviews? That'll tell you how much everyone knows about everything.
Oh, everybody's an expert, bro. Let me tell you, I just did an estimate for a bathroom. I won't look at a bathroom for under 12 grand. If it's a full bath, hallway, whatever, I'm not interested. It's $12,000. The people have to buy the material, and I'll do tile. I'll do whatever. It'll look absolutely stunning. But if prices start changing when I have to put in, you want recessed lights, that's an upgrade. You want me to move the toilet from one side of the room to the other, that's an upgrade. And it is what it is. And I'm busy. So I did an estimate for somebody, and the lady said, wow, this is like, more than what we thought it was going to be. So right there, I knew that this was going to be a problem. So then it turned into the conversation of, it's not really that hard to tile the walls. And I said to the lady, I said, if you want to tile the walls yourself, by all means, like go ahead and tile the walls. Like I'm okay. Well, she goes, well, I don't understand. It's really not that hard to do. And that's the stuff that drives me crazy because everybody's an expert. And I
Everyone
said,
thinks they're an expert until the tiles are falling off when they take a shower,
when they
right?
take a shower.
Everybody's
Well,
an
you want-
expert until the steam loosens the tiles and they fall off the wall.
And I said to the lady, I said, the other thing you have to do is you have to reserve about 10% because when you knock down these walls, you never know what you're going to run into. And it could be a plumbing issue. It could be whatever. So she says, well, we really want to do this bathroom for $5,000. And I said, well, I'm the wrong guy. So I can't do that bathroom for $5,000. She said, look, I can't do 12. Can we do 11? She was a nice lady. I would have done it, but I can't do 12, but I could do 5. So I offered her financing and she said, no, she said, we're going to go out and we're going to get other estimates. And I warned her, I said, if
Goes up.
anybody
The
does
price goes up.
yeah, I said, if anybody does your bathroom for $5,000, I said, don't hire them because it's 2 weeks worth of work for a crew to do this bathroom. It's
There's a lot of things that have to wait in between to do a bathroom.
So if a guy comes in for $5,000, like, give me a fucking break, you know what I mean? But that's where someone is, you know, an expert.
But you want to do the job for someone who thinks the job can be done for $5,000 because they will, you know, they'll be paying for skirt steak when they want filet mignon, and they'll call you over and say, well, my skirt steak doesn't taste like filet mignon.
That account is a long-term problem. That person would be a long-term problem. And you don't want to do anything with that person, only because you find yourself in a situation where this is somebody who is an expert, quote unquote expert, and that's a problem. And it's unfortunate that the lady feels that way. Tom just sent me some really cool pictures of his store. Rob, I'm gonna send them over to you. But that's somebody who, you know, and I had a good friend of mine, Ray Betts, top-notch fucking carpenter. I mean, he blows me out of the water. This guy's top-notch. And he said that he had to do a job, and a guy said, Ray said, it's about 2 days, and I'm going to charge him about $1,200. Fatal error. He said it's about 2 days. So the guy does, so $1,200, the guy figures out $600 a day. Ray finishes in a day and a half. So the guy says, well, I don't want to give you $1,200 anymore. I'm going to give you $600 for the first day. I'm going to give you $300 for the second day because you only worked a half a day. And that's the shit you run into with people who are fucking experts and all that kind of stuff. And that drives me bonkers. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, that's a problem account. I've learned over the years, it's okay to lose a job and it's okay to say no, because sometimes you just can't. It just doesn't make sense. And in that case, it doesn't make sense. Tom, do you get a lot of foot traffic in your store?
You know, up in Hewlett, which is where Bob is, in Devil's Tower, we get lots of foot traffic because we're the only road to Devil's Tower. Belfouche, it just depends on the time of the year. We get decent foot traffic, but it's not off the charts. Remember, I'm close to Sturgis, so we go from, you know, the population of Wyoming is 500,000, and we can get 500,000 visitors in the 2 weeks. So we double, you know, in theory. So, you know, it's, but like, you know, 500,000 bikers are not 500,000 antiquers. So you kind of have to, you sift through all the foot traffic.
How far are you from Mount Rushmore?
Technically, well, the store I think is about 60 miles, and then Hewlett, Wyoming is about 110 miles. I mean, and literally it's an hour and a half. It's not.
Gotcha. I was there actually, and what year was that? I think it was 2018. I went on a baseball trip, and we went to White Sox. Then we went to everyone, White Sox, Cubs, Milwaukee. We went to Minnesota, and on our way to Coors Field in Colorado, we had a couple days. The Colorado wasn't back from a road trip yet while we were still out there. So we drove to South Dakota to see Mount Rushmore. It was amazing. I had vanilla. They had this really ritzy like ice cream shop there, like on the back patio there, and they had the most amazing vanilla bean ice cream. I'm sitting there in the chair, just looking right in front of me, looking at the mountain, like legit right in front of me. And I'm like, it doesn't get any better than this.
No.
And it's just like you don't even have to say anything. You know, like, yeah, so I'm doing this right now, like literally eating my ice cream, and you can see Mount Rushmore. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like growing up on New Jersey, when your friends come in from other place, where do you go? Statue of Liberty, you go to Empire State Building, you do kind of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
When people come to visit you out here, you go to see the heads. You got
what's the deal with the other one? The Indian Chief. What's the other one? The one that's under construction kind of deal.
Crazy Horse.
Is it done yet or no?
No, I doubt that it'll be done in our lifetime, but
Jesus Christ.
I mean, they actually pay. You have to pay to get in there right now to see it midway.
They do pay. Yeah, it's native funded. They take public donations. They don't take they don't really take, I don't believe they take certain donations, but the government donations, that is. But I think on a scale, it's probably like, I don't know, this isn't factual, but maybe 15 times the size of Mount Rushmore. So it's huge.
Wow.
It's huge. You can see it from before you even go in. You can see it.
Yeah,
it's tremendous.
You can climb up and touch the nose of Crazy Horse like twice a year. They'll let you, do they do a Volksmarch or something like that, where you kind of hike through the woods and then you end up coming across the arm.
Or you can be like the 24 people a year that die at the Grand Canyon every year, because there is legitimately, you can do whatever the hell you want there. You can climb. I saw people climbing on rock bluffs that I wouldn't even walk on. Even if I was tethered, I still wouldn't walk on it. And the guy was legit on a little rock bluff that looked like it might have been like a couple feet thick, if it was even that much.
Why does this sound?
He was on a he had to set up a camera and everything, like a special camera. But you're able to walk all the way down if you want to. There's no restriction at all.
Why does that really get me? I feel really turned on by that right now.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, when you get
ready to go.
Devil's Tower, which is up near us, I mean, technically it's a national monument, but
AKA those one in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, that's our front yard. So yeah, it's kind of, again, like to me, I'd still drive by because I'm not really from this part of the country. To me, it's always amazing to see every time I come over the hill driving. Doesn't matter if it's day or night. When I see it, I still go, God, that's kind of cool. So
I had that experience when I used to work in Jersey City, right outside the Holland Tunnel. I worked in the Lackawanna train building, but which is now the Cake Boss's main building. He bought the whole building, so his office was my office on the 7th floor. But anyway, long story short, it's just amazing. When I would go to work and I would get off at 14B, not 14C, to go down, when you get off from 14B, the Twin Towers would be right in front of you, right up in front of you, right in between the exit. And it was like, and you would go in like say 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, it'd be like that would be lit up, and everything else would be dark. And I'm like, awesome. It never lost its shine when you pulled up to it. Like you're always like, wow, that's amazing. Like a city, like in front of you, just 2 massive buildings right in front of you.
Yeah. I feel that way driving to Philly. I've been doing a lot of work in Philadelphia, and when you see the skyline or it's foggy and you can see the buildings just kind of like peeking through the skyline, you're like, holy shit. Like that's, like you just take that second when I went to the old Yankee Stadium the last year that it was in existence, and you're like, hundreds of millions of people walk through these doors, and it's just like, this is the, like, fucking Babe Ruth, played here, and it's like there's that, it's like wow, it's like this. There's like that wow factor thing. If you're not into it, then people don't feel that way about certain things. But if it's something that interests you, like for me, I really would like to go see the Mount Rushmore. I just think it would be just to sit there and be like, imagine it is
amazing. It is amazing to see it.
Think of the vision, though. Think of the vision.
There's a big build up too. You walk up these big stairs to these areas where, and there's these posts, and around every state is represented on either side. Every flag of the United States is around these posts as you walk through these big columns, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when you get to the end of the states, right in front of you, there's a big grand dome, and that's where the main view is. And then there was probably a patio. How deep would you say that is? A couple thousand feet, maybe?
Yeah, probably. I mean,
It's enough for you to walk around.
That wasn't even there.
It's enough for you to walk around. Like I would say it would probably be, you might have an acre of area that's how big the main viewing area is. And there's little nooks. You could go to little nooks if you want to take photos and not have other people come in the way. They have these little like 4-foot nooks that are there, so you could get there, take a photo, and not get anyone else in your shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like this time of year, believe it or not, like you can go there. Like I've been there, and it would be like 3 park rangers and my son and I. That's it.
Yeah. We went Sturgis
because
week.
it's minus 25, Tom.
Yeah.
Minus 25.
That's crazy. We went on a baseball trip in the summer, and I didn't know it was Sturgis, so I was driving at the time like a blacked out Yukon Denali that looked like a drug dealer, or I either looked like a Fed. And I'm driving down this town where it still had in the town, it still had the ropes and the bars for the wooden bars where you could like tie your horse up, but there were like literally thousands of motorcycles in the street, thousands.
Oh yeah.
And when we drove down the street, you could hear the needle scratch on the record, if you know what I mean. Like super uncomfortable. People walking up to our car. I'm like, let's get. And it was the most
fucking story.
You got to do not stay in South Dakota. Stay somewhere else. Go to South Dakota and then go somewhere else and then stay there. We should have just went to Colorado right away. But
I would say that, but that's us. Like we're Sturgis, so we own a bar, and like we go from 300 people year round to say 15,000 over 2 days, and maybe 100,000 visitors over the course of a day or two, and the bars are jammed. And like, look, I mean, it's not uncommon in our bar to have a guy ride a horse in the back door and order a beer and ride his horse right out. Just, especially during rodeo weekend, it's not like something that would happen on a Tuesday. But if they guys got a little crazy, Tuesday might be the night that they do it. It's just
great.
It's kind of funny because, like, if you think about it, again, I live in what I always say is like 1950 with the internet.
Yeah.
But it's no different than it was in the 1880s, because this area, there's billionaires and millionaires and people coming to seek their fortune, and then then there's bikers and hunters and just curiosity seekers all bunched up in the same place, and it's no different than it was in the 1880s.
What I don't understand is there was a stretch that I drove. I don't know what the road was, but there was a road where we went about 250 miles on one single desolate road, and all there was big circular wheels of hay all over the place.
Yeah,
and a lot of livestock. But we literally we had our GPS on, right? So I had my map and everything, and it says how many miles, like 250 miles to where I had to go. And eventually I went, and the phone just turned into a red triangle and a white screen because there was no cellular service for about 3 or 4 hours. Is that a common thing by you out there?
Every day.
I mean, there's legit, Ray, hours and hours of no signal.
Be great. Yeah. I'd be happy.
I feel like a lot of problems are buried out there, if you know what I mean. Like no one can be tracked. No one has any idea what's going on out there at all.
No.
So incidentally, here's what's changed. I think it's Apple now. When you go into some of those dead zones, now in the upper corner of your cell phone pops up a little SOS only symbol. Mm-hmm. And I think it's Apple's now got you satellite connected during that time frame where you can't make a call unless it's an emergency call. And on these emergency calls, I think it's only been around for a few months. They've already saved like 14 or 15 people.
I think so. I think it's just pretty much you're connected to the satellite world. Just send the GPS. It's not really even a phone call.
Send help now.
No, that's really what it is. It's just like the same thing as you activated your low jack or something. It's like a ping. It's like a ping. It's like an emergency ping. So the troopers or whatever, the states or the feds could actually pick up the ping.
Now you see, I would be. Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To say my county is the size of North Jersey. It's 70 miles across. I mean, it's 2 times or 3 times the size of Rhode Island. That's just my county, and there's 6,000 people. So that's it. And I go when I leave like Hewlett and I'm heading into South Dakota. If I know that I'm driving and I'm talking to Ray on the phone, I'll say, "Look, I'll call you in another 45 minutes," because I know for the next 45 minutes of driving, I don't have coverage at all.
And the sign said next town was like 250 miles, and I had like 248 in the gas tank.
You're like,
so I drove very, very careful that day.
Turn the air conditioner off.
As it turned out, about 50 miles before it was a semi-town with a petrol and, you know, like a truck stop. So it was okay. But some of the places were really sketchy out there. So
Yeah.
there was a point where we were like, all right, we might run out of gas. This might actually happen. Because we went to a place you couldn't even get gas. Like, it was like an old style gas station. Like we just have to roll the dice and see what happens.
See, I'm
Yeah, you were
fascinated
going-
by that.
Yeah, and that's every day. Like, I send pictures to my assistant. She's over in the Poconos, and I'll be just driving, and as far as you see, there's not another car, another human, there's not even a telephone pole. I mean, it's nothing.
And you see what a lot of people don't understand is when you hear about people complain about guns, and you say, well, what do you need guns for? Most people don't realize that the gun is your first line of defense. When the police are 15 minutes away from you, maybe responding to an incident, that is when a handgun and a firearm is needed. That's why there are firearms, by the way. That's the reason, the definition of that.
Yeah. So what Tom just said, 15 minutes, they're like, that's close where he is.
Yeah,
Tom, how many
that's what I'm saying is, like, you got to figure no one's coming. Like, it's the mop-up crew. It's like in the horror movie. Like, all the shit goes down and the police pull up when they're done. Like, when the whole conflict is over in the movie, the cops pull up. That's what it's really like.
Tom, does your town have a
if there's
cop or
bar
no?
fight? What's that, Ray?
Does your town have a police station or no?
Yeah, we have one police officer, but you know,
Nice.
he's not
One guy,
duty.
Barney Fife with the bullet in his pocket.
Fucking great.
I don't want to pick on him today, but I got funny stories on that we could take offline one day.
Oh,
Oh,
my
shit.
God, that's hilarious.
You know, like if we have a fight in a bar and people like call the cops. Well, okay, think about it.
Call Bob, you mean? Just call Bob. Call Bob up on the phone.
Oh,
That's
Bob,
all.
the cop.
But you think about it, you know, if I was to call the cops and he's not on duty, which sometimes he's not,
Yeah.
that would be asking like a
There's one cop. There's one cop, like one total. Or is it one guy like on per shift?
So we like no, we don't even have full shifts. There's one guy 8 hours a day.
So like, you know, like I said, everyone, please commit crime from 8 to 4, please. Make that AM to PM, please. 8 to 4,
Exactly.
please.
So
Crime only.
so like, if you
Let's
think
have all
about
the
it,
crime out.
Right, but if he's
Right.
not on duty, you know, the sheriffs are basically covering an area the size of Massachusetts. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's fucking
and there
great.
could be 2 guys on in the entire state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's
So if
great.
you think about it, if I have a bar fight and I say I got to call the cops, in theory, if that guy's on the other side of the county, it might be an hour and 45 minutes before he shows up.
You might be cleaning the
never been to a
floors.
bar
You might be
fight,
cleaning the floors by the time he shows up.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah, you
much,
missed
like,
it.
why would you call the cops if they're going to get there? Everyone's going to be
Because I always say call the cops in movies, because the movies tell you to call the cops.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, like most of the time, the guys that got in a fight are hugging each other by the time an hour and a half shows up because they got in a fight and they resolved their issue and they're moving on. You know,
well, even in the
So-
Poconos, we had our friends, Lucy, my wife's friend, Christine's friend, Lucy. You know, Lucy Ann Paparella. She used to work at Steak and Ale. And I don't know
Back
if you
in the day.
remember her now. Back in the day, she lives in upstate New York now, right? I love her. She's fucking great. But she lived in the Poconos, and one time they called the police, and the trooper called them and said, I can't find you. Like, he's like, where do you live? And they're like, well, you got to go down this dirt road. You got to make like a right at the cow, and you got to do whatever. And they had somebody that Brian, her ex-husband, who was her husband at the time, you know, he had his gun out because they had somebody running around the cornfields where they lived that they couldn't, you know, like get rid of this guy. They couldn't figure out who he was. It was just ended up being like stupid kids fucking around, like, you know, college students fucking around the Poconos. But, you know, they called the cop. The cop couldn't figure out where he was first. And so it took the police like an hour to get there because they're like, we're lost. Like, can you help us?
Right.
I mean, there's places in Pennsylvania where my nephew is state trooper, where so on the map of his section, it's half of it is covered like in little bougie police, you know, like really nice areas, and a lot of it is rural to the point where there is no other police but state police. So if you call the police, the state police come, and we're talking it's a lot of Pennsylvania. It's a lot of it.
Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, Wyoming is kind of that way too. It's
Yeah.
you know, you have
Well,
a
actually, the point is a lot of the world is like that. Like a
Could
lot of
you
the world is
imagine-
not like Hamilton, or is not like Philadelphia, or not like New York City. A lot of the
thank
world
God.
is like your town, or a town like in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where you have a small police force, or some other places in Media, Pennsylvania, out near the airport, where a lot of it is just rural, just legit. Like he's caught people like stealing like 35 shopping carts, metal shopping carts, like busted them on a back road, like with all these shopping carts piled out of the back of the car.
Fucking crazy.
I mean, just
Could
like
you-
crazy shit. You know, like
Could you
like
imagine being the one cop though, Rob? Could you imagine where like he's on duty, just like patrolling the town? Like who are you gonna pull? You know everybody, so you
yeah.
can't.
Well,
write a
I mean, you got
ticket.
to do a lot of stuff. Like when a deer gets hit by a car, when
Yeah,
a car
I mean,
gets
you're
hit by
really
a deer,
doing,
and the deer's still alive. Guess who has to kill the deer? The
you're
deer.
really doing
very-
damage control because we got to pull Tom over. Like I'm writing you a ticket. I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Like I'm not writing me a ticket. I know you. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
well,
So it's like,
you know, like the look.
you know?
I mean, the local police officer has a very tough job because it is
Yeah.
a very delicate dance in a small town. Because look, if you pull me over and I live in town, he didn't pull me over because I was following the law. I probably broke a law. Like for example, I pulled into a four-way intersection and there was no one behind me, and I backed through a four-way intersection.
Yeah.
You can't do that in Philadelphia, but you can't do that in Hewlett, Wyoming either. So of course I got pulled over. But he deserved to pull me over. He didn't write
Sure.
me a ticket, and that's where he walks the fine line. He's like, "Tom, you're driving like an idiot." Well, I was, you know,
Thank
but
you.
there was no one around. But that doesn't.
But
mean
that's
I can't-
isn't that what the police are supposed to do? The police, it's not really primarily about getting a ticket. It's primarily like, hey, don't do that. Come on, you know you're not supposed to do that.
Well,
Look, you
here-
pulled me over because I was a dumbass, right?
You know, if you're lucky enough to get pulled over and do something wrong, hopefully you get someone who wants to let you off with a warning and be like, all right, I did something stupid. I'll never do that again. Hopefully you never do it again. But you know, that's what we
But
have.
here it's different though. It's different because there's the municipal court. It creates the cycle of poverty, which we could do a whole fucking podcast about how I feel about that. And the police have to generate an income. They don't have a choice because that's like what they do. You know what I mean? But I look at it two different ways. If I were to dial 911 now, we'd have 5 fucking cops at this house within minutes. Within absolute minutes. If you dial 911, if that guy's not on duty, the other guy might be like, all right, bro, like I'll be there in like an hour. You know what I mean? But
if I
that's
dial 911, Pam picks up, and I know who Pam is.
that's great. That's great. She's at her house watching fucking TV. You know,
You
what I mean? Which is
dial
fucking
911
hilarious.
out of the wrong county. It's like, you know, I think tomorrow around 10 a.m. works for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's
would
a
be-
good time to commit crime. But
I was
now
just saying,
you look
instead of
at
dialing 911, I just call Pam directly because it's
at her
probably faster.
house. That's great. And I look at it now. Policing now is fucked up. Like the shit that we. All right, so here's your store. That's the
when we bought it.
before. That's
That was
when
the
you bought
before.
it. Disaster. And that's now. Look at that. Look at the difference. And you and your kids did all of this work, right?
Where is it located? What town?
That's in Belfouche, South Dakota.
That's amazing. That's great. Is that
Yeah, so it's
up
an
here?
old
Up here in the picture? Is that another area? Is that another part of the building?
So
Yeah.
back in the 1950s, prior to the 1950s, it was open like a general store would be. And they enclosed it to modernize it, which is why they put that steel in front of it.
Uh-huh.
And all we did is just pop out the steel and re-put the windows back in. And it's basically an enclosed area that they did it for heating purposes. I didn't peel out the roof. So what we did is we just added it for decor, basically.
Yeah.
So
You gotta
That's
explain what you gotta
beautiful.
explain what's going on over here. Is this dummies
I
or
was looking at that.
a little freaky?
Yeah. So the bottom floor is
They come
again,
to
and
life
again we
at night.
put up a little Facebook site for Black Hills Curio Company. But Relic Diggers, he actually is he rents the main floor, and he's an antique dealer and collector.
Right.
So, and this is Main Street Belfouche. So like you would go down Macy's, this would be, during Christmas time where you would go down Fifth Avenue.
It doesn't even look like the same place. It looks like a completely
No,
different
it's
place.
absolutely amazing. Look at how beautiful the
It
front
pops it out with the color you did right there. It pops it out perfectly.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, well, this is what happens when your brother's an artist. We pick the right colors. We try to skip,
It looks good.
So my kid got into crown molding. So the dental work, he kind of did that. And like, again, he kind of liked, because we kind of rebuilt everything inside from scratch. And like, like we were doing another building in Hewlett, and he's doing, quadruple stacked Roman column, banisters for me. Like, it's crazy. what he
gorgeous.
does.
It's gorgeous.
So,
I love that. That's really like Main Street Western architecture. You know what I mean? Like you don't see a building like that in Trenton, New Jersey or whatever. That's Main Street. It's boxy and it's basic, but
Yeah.
it has those touches of like you said, like the crown molding, the second, when you broke open the second floor here, and it's very artistic, and you look
It's very saloon-esque for sure.
It's saloon-esque. That's
Right?
a great way of saying it. It's
Like the
you
wood,
could
like the
walk in-
painted wood with the exposed piece and the trim, and looks great.
Rob, you could walk
we're
in
doing
this building in 1850, 1950, or 2050.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make a difference.
You
It's
would have
that
two
building.
pieces of glass on each side. That would, the rest of it would have been wood door, but the rest of it, you would have had a window or two to be thrown out of, I'm sure.
How fucking
Yeah, well,
great is that?
these would have been set back, the doors originally, which will be the final phase. We'll get rid of those doors.
And you'll do like a little nook opening where people can look on the inside of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That'll be
Gorgeous.
the final thing we do when we're kind of like gonna put the cherry on top and
We
say,
call
hey,
the jewelry store look. Like when you like in New Jersey, like if you want to have a little store without people going in, you go in like 4 feet and it's a little doorway, and you can put things in the display where people can see it through the window.
Tom, did
Right.
you have any nonsense from the town, like, oh, you got to paint it this color, or you can't put a store there? Was there any of that, or was the inspector like, thank God somebody bought this fucking place? Let you do what you need to do.
I think it's more of the latter.
Good.
Not to disparage the previous owner, but he wouldn't go get permits, and he did a lot of stuff, and he fought a lot with the town. So I went in when I bought it and said, I bought this from so-and-so. And they're like, oh, thank God. And then I said, well, what do I need to do if I want to do this? They're like, well, you need a permit. So the first thing we did is, and this, again, I said, I want to do this, and this, and we want to put storage units in the basement. I told you this story once before.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, what do I need to do the storage units? I go, well, you need a plan and some kind of drawing maybe. And this is how simple, stupid it is. I had my kids measure out the basement,
Right.
and then we built a 3D diorama of the basement,
Nice.
the Lego. And then we
That's
took the Lego diorama to zoning and planning with like a key,
Fucking awesome.
and we presented it to zoning and planning. And zoning and planning approved us immediately for the adoption of storage units in the basement because it was kind of dead space.
Great.
And then we went to City Hall to do our 3 meetings. And the next day I went in and I figured out how much it was going to cost. And I think the permit was like $250.
Yeah.
And we paid the permit and we do the inspections, and people have kind of left us alone because, again, it was kind of just like you follow the rules. Like, look, I'm not a big pay my permitting fees and stuff like that, but the idea was to kind of like teach the kids. Like my kids presented to the town what their idea was, and when I was in Florida and I couldn't make the meeting, and they did it on their own. So that was the life lesson of that. So
I had met with an inspector recently for a kitchen, and I did a garage. I turned a garage into a laundry room and all of this stuff. And the guy was like, he goes, I like working with you. He goes, you do everything like you're supposed to do. And I'm like, well, it's a lot easier to wanting to get you in a fucking headlock. You know what I mean? And like wanting to fight you for nonsense. Like, this is what the people want. We hire an architect. Here's the plan. This is the plan. Do you approve it? Yes or no? Yes, we approve the plan. Then we follow the plan and we build it according to the plan. And then you come and look at it. And that's it. And everybody's happy at the end of the day. And I'm not going to fight you. You want to come and count the Tico nails, or you want to come and do whatever, I'm all for it. And I charge people for that. Like, I don't do, if I got to meet the inspector 5 fucking times and I got to meet him, you know, if he gives me a window of 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and I have to sit out here all day, or my son has to sit there all day to meet the inspector, you're paying for it. But at the end of the day, you know what? It's going to be done right. You're going to be able to sell your house. You're going to be able to do all the things that you want to do because you did this the proper way and you have a final inspection. So for me, even when we owned those properties in Trenton and they said, oh, you can only paint it a certain color, or you can only do whatever with that, fine. I'm not gonna try to fight you so I can paint this building orange. If you're telling me it has to be, you know, gunmetal gray and whatever,
yeah, we had none of that.
Fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to fight you. So, Tom, I'm excited that you were on the podcast. We talked a lot about really cool things. If people wanted to find you, or if people wanted to shop with you, how could they do that?
You know, if in the antique world, we've, you know, and again, you know, it would be, you could look at us, like I posted a lot of interior photos of the Black Hills Curio Company. So depending on what end that they want, believe it or not, they can even go find my brother Bob Coronado.
Right.
And he's got his website and everything like that. I mean, you could always contact us direct, call me on a cell phone. I mean, in the mortgage world, it's the same thing. It's all the same numbers. They all kind of go to the same place.
So Black Hills Curio Company. And if people are interested in buying or selling or learning more, that's definitely the best place to find you.
Yeah. Or just send me a text on my cell phone, so.
Tom Coronado. Tom, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Absolutely appreciate it. I told Christine that you were going to be on tonight, and she was like, definitely say hi. And I'm going to do her one better. I am snapping a picture of you right now so that way she could see it, and she knows I'm absolutely crazy. I'm going to send it to her. And thank you so much for taking a couple of hours with me and Rob and humoring me on my podcast.